Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Best Games Period. We are back, baby. This week we're going to be talking about Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, which I almost called Modern Warfare 4, which is not right, but I stopped it, and now we're stumbling through this intro. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me, as always, is the ever-lovely Daniel Jones. And returning to us from the mists of time is Jeremy Brown.
Who?
You, silly.
Oh, it me.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm glad to be back.
We are glad to have our mojo monkey back.
We are. We didn't really know what to do without you.
Yeah, well, when people lose their mojo, they have a long road to try to figure out what to do with their lives. Some of them just wander rampantly, come up with a plan and do something about it. But, you know, everybody's different.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Anyway, so we're the gang's all back together, and this week we're talking about Infinity Ward and their before they split from Activision and bought their freedom to make Titanfall
To become Respawn Entertainment.
Yep.
Yep.
They left a kind of a little bit of a legacy with the Modern Warfare series of Call of Duty.
Some might say that this game, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, is like their opus.
Some might say that. Some might say that.
Some might say that Call of Duty 2 is. Who knows? I mean, these guys. Let's just give a little bit of background on Infinity Ward. Their lineage traces back to Medal of Honor, where that team was.
Wait, which Medal of Honor? The old one or the newer one, where you could play as the Taliban? But that got changed.
No, the older one. Medal of Honor Allied Assault.
Not the bearded one?
Not the bearded one. There might have been some beards in it, but no. Medal of Honor Allied Assault came out in, I want to say 2001.
Okay.
I could be off on that.
Interesting time to be a war game coming out.
Well, yeah. But it was when we were still kind of obsessed with World War II shooters in the video game industry. And Allied Assault, up to that point, was the best. By most accounts, was the best. And at that point, they weren't Infinity Ward. They were another name. And I can't...
Okay.
I can't think of it.
We dig deep here, folks.
Clearly.
Let me research it. But then they became...
Research.
And then they became Infinity Ward. And after that, they made Call of Duty. The first one.
Right.
And that was their real kind of coming out party. Because Allied Assault was great, but that was their one game, and they made it with the EA, and then they basically stuff fell through with EA. I don't really know exactly what it was, and then they decided to get into bed with Activision and made Call of Duty, which the first Call of Duty on PC was really a hit. It was a hit PC game. It was more of a hit than Allied Assault was. Yeah, their name was 2015 Inc. That's what it was. I knew it was
they really
year.
They really put a end date on that company.
Well, they ended long before that.
Looking back on it from 2016.
So then they went on and made more Call of Duties, and it's just funny that with Titanfall they ended up going back to EA.
That is a little bit weird.
So they were 2015, then they were Infinity Ward, then they went back to EA and became Respawn. And now they're still currently Respawn, and they have Titanfall 2 coming out this November.
which finally has a campaign.
Yeah.
That's
Yay.
like the one thing I wanted from the first Titanfall. And that campaign was abysmal.
Oh, well, the first Titanfall didn't even... I mean, what kind of campaign was there?
It was like a string of multiplayer matches. It was the exact same as multiplayer, except that there were tiny... I don't want to say cinematic, but it was like tiny cinematic events that began and ended each match. And they changed based on who was winning.
You guys are selling Titanfall short. It had a huge campaign, a huge advertising campaign.
That is true. Although, it's also true that it's really, really hard to make giant robots not look cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Power Rangers do it all the time. But
Hey, that reboot's gonna be a hit.
uh-huh.
Sure.
Also, I just want to say I'm proud of us. We got into this episode with, I think, the absolute minimum of tangents that we've ever had on an episode.
Listen, have I...
Which is
have
rare.
I told
since
you
we
guys
haven't
my
talked in a
feelings
few
on
weeks.
PlayStation 4 Pro?
Oh, gosh. Can we talk about that just for a second?
Yes,
That's all it's going to
I
take
feel
to
like
talk about it. 'Cause
we
there's
have to
nothing
make
to
up
it.
some time here because we didn't have a tangent.
Well, did you guys watch that whole thing?
No, I was at work.
I did not watch it. Yes,
Okay,
likewise.
but did you kind of have takeaways from that PlayStation 4 Pro announcement
Yes,
and the Slim announcement?
I believe I tweeted.
I do have a Twitter.
What'd you guys think?
So what? It's $400, right?
Yeah.
And it adds the functionality of a slightly better processor and can stream and play 4K games, but cannot play 4K Blu-rays. Correct?
Yeah, which seems like a pretty big
Yeah.
oversight.
Yeah, that's kind of. I'd say more than big. It's kind of a big. I mean, it's a big deal.
I could not care less about these secondary, like, mid-gen console revamps. I don't even know really how to classify them, but
Yeah.
isn't the Scorpio Xbox One... I think that can play 4K movies.
I'm
Yes,
pretty
it
sure.
can.
Pretty
4K
sure that.
Blu-rays.
Pretty
Yes.
sure the S model can't it?
Yes, and the Xbox One S can as well.
The one that's currently out can play it. Can
Yeah.
play it. Yeah.
And Sony's own proprietary hardware can't play their own proprietary Blu-rays.
Yeah. It blows the mind.
Well, that, and it's such an obvious marketing thing. Like, they did it with the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, and Sony also makes movies. I mean, let's just throw that out there.
Well,
Why would they not want their movies to be able to play? I mean, if you have the TV and whatnot.
yeah. My biggest takeaway, though, from that presentation, because I actually watched a fair bit of it, it came off like a ad for televisions. Like they are saying, oh, you can get the PlayStation 4 Pro, but you'll only notice a difference if you don't have one of those conventional televisions. And I've never heard the phrase conventional television used more in my entire life.
You mean so my rabbit ears with the dials you have to turn by hand isn't going to work with it very well?
No, I mean, like, you're not going to notice a marked improvement in visuals unless you have a 4K resolution TV.
Well, of course not.
Well, yeah.
Duh.
But it's just like Sony makes TVs. They're trying really hard to sell 4K TVs because 4K TVs are really expensive.
So how does it interact with the PlayStation VR? Like, is there any added benefit to having the Pro with that?
Apparently.
Yeah, apparently it makes it a smoother experience. I think it still works with PlayStation 4, the base model,
does.
but you kind of have to take them at their word because without having an actual headset, you can't really tell for yourself, but they are claiming that it works much better with the PlayStation 4 Pro.
I mean,
Well,
I've
stool
played...
softeners also make things a smoother experience, but that doesn't mean that, everybody wants to go out and get them.
I played the PSVR in a store and played Eve Valkyrie, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
And it worked just fine. I didn't get sick. And
What's the retail price of the VR?
I think that's $350. Yeah, it costs
So
the
you're
same.
you're looking at $750 to get the two.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And if you don't have a 4K TV, add $1,000 on top of that.
1,000? Are they down to 1,000?
They're down. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was pulling that number out of my butt.
Well, they are down. Thousands maybe lowballing it, but
Yeah.
1,000's
Not
like
much.
the
Not very
crappy
much.
Spectrum brand model. If you want a good Sony one, it's going to cost you 4K.
Well, so that's kind of the whole thing with me is just I feel like the PlayStation 4 Slim seems like an idea that came from Sony from PlayStation. Like the PlayStation brand wanted a sleeker, kind of sexier new PlayStation. We've seen that before with the Wii even had one of those. But
Well, the PS3 had it. The PS2
Yeah.
had it. I'm pretty sure the PS1 even had it at some point.
you
Maybe
might
not.
be right. I think they had a... Yeah, I think you are right. But the whole concept of a slightly upgraded version of hardware, like the Scorpio or, this PlayStation 4 Pro, that rubs me the wrong way. Like, I get why you'd want it if you have a 4K TV, but at the same time, it makes me uneasy that maybe consoles are moving in kind of a phone direction. Like, every 2 years, there's going to be a new model.
It's just silly. Like, I don't know of any networks that are broadcasting in 4K yet. Maybe there are. I don't know. And I suppose games that support them. Why would you not include Blu-ray support? That's just mind-boggling.
Right.
Well, it feels to me like it's a move on Sony's part, because if you look at Sony as a whole company, one of their only profitable branches is the PlayStation department. And I feel like they're trying to leverage that to sell more TVs.
It's like
And 4K
something like
players.
70% of their operating income.
But even if that's the case, it still makes sense because what good is a 4K TV with the PlayStation Pro if you can't watch Star Wars 4K on it?
But then you can also sell them a 4K Blu-ray player that you make.
Okay, anybody that buys all three of those, I'm gonna smack right now. Okay.
I mean, I don't think it's a good idea, but I think that's kind of what they're thinking. Like, you get them roped into like a bundle type thing, or you sell them on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and that means they have to go get a 4K TV, and if the PlayStation 4 Pro doesn't play 4K Blu-rays, then maybe they get a 4K Blu-ray player too, and it's just kind of like, it felt really commercially, their announcement, which, they're, at the end of the day, they're a company that's trying to sell products. I get why it would feel commercially, but it was less, here's a really cool thing, and more like, you should really buy a 4K TV. That's how it felt to me anyway.
Right.
I mean, what's next? Somebody's gonna announce Bluetooth earbuds that cost $160. I mean, what's going on?
Oh my goodness. They've already put out enough earbuds in the world to literally outfit everyone with like 5.
Exactly. But yet we can never find them. So.
Well, that's the genius of making them so tiny.
Yeah, so you can even find them even less.
So, like, to me, this just smacks of all right. So I've been thinking a lot about, like, I had this long conversation with Coley last night about California and Silicon Valley and the area where she used to live when I lived there. She lived in California, and we spent a lot of time together, and we spent time out there. So we were talking about it because it came up on the Giant Bombcast this week, and they were just talking about how, and I've watched a documentary about how the tech industry out there has just made everything so expensive, and it's priced everybody out of San Francisco because they can't afford to live there. So
San Francisco was expensive long before that.
Yes, it was, but it wasn't to the degree that it is now. And it's just like, it's gotten to the point that the tech industry is becoming, they don't really know what people want, and they're just grasping at things. and they're trying to shove stuff down our throats that we don't necessarily need and we can't necessarily afford. And I think VR isn't an example of that because VR actually has some sort of innovation. This is just like a luxury item. It's just a thing that you should buy if you can afford a 4K TV, and you can also afford VR, and you can afford to buy this as well. Like, why not do it? But who else is it for? I don't know who else it's for. Like, I don't know. The Scorpio is going to have more benefits. It's more powerful. The specs are clearly more powerful, and it can run 4K Blu-rays. So if you really care about that stuff, then do that. But also, if you don't have the money for this, then you just stick to the regular PS4.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is for, like, they even said it right at the beginning of their conference. I guess you'd call it a press conference. It's really not for people who have a PlayStation 4 right now. Like, all this stuff is just for people who don't have one yet. They've sold 40 million PlayStation 4s, and they're aiming to try and sell to, the rest of Earth.
But didn't they also... I mean, how much is the Slim going to be?
The Slim is going to be $300.
So, I mean, I don't know. It seems like they're like one or the other, I guess. I don't know why, because if you don't have a PS4 and you still want one, I don't know that you would go out and buy a PS4 just for that instead of buying just a 4K Blu-ray player.
Right. But I mean, like, it just seems there. It's a luxury item, I think. Well, it's entirely a luxury item. You don't need a PlayStation 4 to survive. But if you're looking to get a console, these new models aren't made for people who already have them. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, are
the
they
fact
ever?
that the fact that it works with the VR makes me think that they want people to get rid of their base model and get this.
But
the base model works with VR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just saying.
I'm just worried about how much longer it will work with VR. I don't know.
Well, that's true. Like that's kind of the question: is to what extent are these features going to be used? Because I just have to imagine that most game developers are going to be developing for just the base PlayStation 4 still.
Well, I mean, with the 40 million install units, that's where the smart money is.
Exactly. And it seemed like the only real difference that we're going to be seeing is, people are going to be able, with the PlayStation 4 Pro, going to be able to see more of what is already there in the games that they're playing. Like, oftentimes, character models are really detailed. You just can't see them all the way because the resolution isn't that high. But on 4K, if you have a device that can do 4K, you're going to be able to see it better.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of in the boat, and I don't know that I'm alone, and I don't know that I'm not alone, where graphics are pretty great all the way around right now.
Yeah.
And to spend that much more money to invest in better graphics just seems kind of unreasonable. Like, if it was a whole new generation of consoles a few years down the road, I would totally be behind it. But
right.
We're not quite there yet.
Well, it still feels like people have just recently got on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 trains, and we're already seeing new hardware.
I mean, I see people, I don't know about every day, but I see people all the time on Twitter, like, tweeting about how they finally got their first 1080p TV. Like, not everybody even has that yet.
Exactly. And I mean, I think we're just seeing maybe the result of, like, increasing technology progression. Like, the speed at which technology progresses is just getting faster and faster. Because like the time difference between when the original Nintendo came out and when the Super Nintendo came out was a pretty decent chunk of time, but the graphical leap was huge.
Sure.
Now, even with that same amount of time, we've kind of hit an area of diminishing returns where we're not going to see the visuals are not going to be where we're going to see significant change in presentation for games. It's going to be in stuff like AI and physics, and
it's going to be a whole nother like smorgasbord of 4K remakes, 4K remasters. We're going to see Resident Evil 4 4K.
Well,
maybe I'm just way more cynical than you are, Jack, but I don't see the innovation in this. I just see, let's pile on better graphics. And it's like, that's way too, like, I don't trust the industry right now to really innovate.
But what they are saying about 4K, or at least what I got from what they were trying to say about PlayStation 4 Pro, is that they don't need to make 4K remasters of these games, because the detail in the models, like for example, they were showing For Honor in action. The details in the models that are in the 1080p version, it's the same detail in the 4K version, but you can just see it better, is what they're claiming, because the resolution is that much higher. The model in game is still the same. It's just clearer in a higher resolution format.
It's like when I look on my phone, because I looked on my phone at some of the videos today, and like the Mass Effect video or like the Spider-Man video, and Mark Cerny in the Spider-Man video is like, you look at those people in the street in any other platform, like you wouldn't be able to tell what they were, and here they're individual people with all their own features, and it's like, and I'm squinting on my phone, I'm like, I don't even see people. There are people,
right? And I'm just saying that the difference between 1080p and 4K is not as huge as the difference between Nintendo graphics and Super Nintendo graphics.
Yeah, the leap isn't nearly. I mean, you would think so. It's another 3020 whatever. But.
So that's the thing that bothers me, is that it's like, instead of actually trying to innovate with the gameplay and extending this console cycle so that we finally get some innovative stuff, which we've started to. I think this is the first year of this console cycle where I've really felt like there was consistent innovation coming in from kind of across the board. And we, instead of like expanding on that and going with that, it's like we're just trying to throw more fidelity at stuff. And I don't understand. Like, video games aren't always going to be what they are now. But if we're just constantly chasing this rabbit of better graphics, then we're not going to be able to chase any other fucking rabbits.
I mean, I think you're right. I think what we're seeing is kind of the last gasp of that. They're trying to wring as much money out of that fidelity race as possible. Like, you're right. The graphics can't get much better than where they are. Like, they can obviously improve in some ways, but a lot of that has to do less with the power, or like your television display.
Yeah, it's not your display, it's the processors and the developers.
Yeah, it's the internal hardware and the back end software and rendering techniques and all that stuff.
Yeah,
I just feel like this is like an excuse.
It is. Yeah. It totally is, and that's. I think we were having two different conversations at the same time.
Yeah.
But like my point is, most of the innovation going forward after what I think is going to be the 4K last gasp, I think a lot of it's just going to be in VR, You're going to see it in VR, and then in stuff like physics and, more higher fidelity lighting, all that stuff. It's going to be engine-based, not... Anyway.
At that point, it needs to be gameplay-based. Like, there need to be new types of interacting with the virtual world. And VR is a good step in that direction. But, like, at this point, I don't feel like we've maxed out what we can do outside of VR. So we haven't even figured that out yet.
I mean, our last episode was about a game, Mark of the Ninja. It took until like 2012 to get a side-scrolling stealth game. So we've totally not maxed out on the possibility on the gameplay.
Yeah, I don't think once one becomes, the others are obsolete. I mean, I think that there's plenty of games that prove that.
Yeah.
But I think Jack was kind of right. It's kind of a fringe item, or maybe you said this, Daniel. I don't know. Somebody said it. It's a luxury item. And if you can afford it, then go for it. But it's not necessary to have a true awesome gaming experience.
Yeah, it really feels... It feels almost desperate.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of the feeling I got from the press conference was, please buy our stuff. Buy all of our stuff. Please. Yep. And other than that, Horizon Zero Dawn looks cool.
It does.
That was my main takeaway. But I think we kind of got off topic, guys.
We did. We had a tangent. Daniel's happy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though,
gosh.
To wrap that, my thoughts on that. Shush. Sony failed today. Like, they absolutely failed. Because everybody went into this event wanting to know who this thing is for. And wanting Sony to convince us that it's something that we're going to want in our living rooms, or that other people are going to want in their living rooms. And I don't feel like they convinced anybody of that. I still feel like we still have all those questions. Whether or not they tried to answer that, we still don't know. The question still hasn't really been.
They should have showed area rugs, because I'd like a new area rug in my living room.
It would really tie the room together.
It would.
It felt to me like they were trying... It felt to me kind of like when Sega released the Sega CD add-on for the Genesis. Like, no one really wanted that. And that's how I feel like the PlayStation 4 Pro has been received. I feel like a lot of people are interested in the Slim. That was good. Good move.
Yeah. No, the Slim's great, and my dad's in the market for a PS4. He's got the money for it. He's got saved up. He's getting a Slim. Nice. I told him wait another week. So,
yeah. Good move.
Good move, Greg.
But the PlayStation 4 the PlayStation 4 Pro on the other hand just feels like an unnecessary accessory that they're trying to sell. And I don't think a lot of people are interested in buying if the Twitter reaction has anything to go by.
Yeah, I mean, maybe when it comes down in price and the PS4, they just make that obsolete and get rid of it, then sure. But, yeah.
Yeah. Although, also, our last Twitter poll showed that 66% of people disagreed with us on Mark of the Ninja. So... maybe we shouldn't listen to Twitter.
Yeah, well, I just want to point out that I was not on that show and I didn't get a vote, so...
What would you have said, just out of curiosity?
I have no idea, I never played the game. What'd you guys say?
He said yes.
Yes.
Then I would have had to have said no, just out of spite.
Okay, but for real, let's talk about Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare.
Let's do it.
We already talked a little bit about Infinity Ward.
Yeah, Daniel talked a lot about Infinity Ward.
Yeah, he did.
Wow. I just won't talk anymore then. Oh, hold on. I have banana bread being delivered to me right now.
Oh. Okay then.
Oh, I get the end piece? Sure. You sure?
That's the end piece is the pro piece. Right. Banana bread pro. The luxury you don't need.
Daniel.
What was that?
Daniel just betrayed all of his professed beliefs.
It's a luxury
And it doesn't
item.
play 4K movies.
Yeah.
This
No,
banana
but
bread could.
I actually
play
do
4K.
want a 4K TV, but I don't want to invest everything else needed into it to watch an occasional 4K movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, pushing a 4K TV feels like it's still, like, 2 or 3 years too early. Maybe less than that, but... Just
Well,
feels
if they're
too
truly
soon.
coming down that much in price, then I guess it won't be long. But still,
Yeah.
all the more reason to support 4K movie playback with your new console.
Right. Your new, sort of old console.
Yes.
But Modern
All right,
Warfare 4.
so Modern Warfare 4, that's a video game.
It is a video game that we have all played. And... yeah. I feel like I'm going to be a bad guy on this episode.
Ah, I knew it.
Oh, shut up. You did not know that.
I did.
How?
Because you have hinted at it.
I was on the fence, okay? I was on the fence, and then I started, reminding myself, doing some research on the game beforehand, and I think it's a product of its time. I think if you play it now, you are going to get less out of it than you would have back in 2007. I think it kind of hit at just the right time for the U.S. Basically, if you were a kid when 9/11 happened, you were a teenager by the time Call of Duty 4 came out. And I think that is a large part of what made it successful, because it rang true with kind of the reigning political philosophy of the time, and it hit on a lot of those big issues.
The political philosophy of kill the Arabs.
Well, it's
Except it was Russians.
it was both.
It was both,
Well,
actually.
yes, but
So it dealt with all that stuff in a way that was, I'm going to say, relatively mature. And it did it in a way that felt not like it was pandering. And it also introduced the whole multiplayer aspect that completely revolutionized everything from Halo.
okay.
And to be honest, I don't like the multiplayer stuff in the Call of Duty games.
Yeah, I
and-
could care less about it.
So to me, it just kind of started off this trend of Activision mining this series for all it's worth, and to the point where I think that you can make a case that it's kind of morphed the series from its original starting point, like its original philosophical starting point, to the point where they're making games about, all of South America has joined together to invade the United States and steal their giant space laser that can kill anyone. They're the bad guys, even though the United States is the one who built the giant death laser in space.
What?
That's like the plot of, I think, Call of Duty Ghosts.
Yeah. I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, the plot is all about how South America, the entire continent of South America, by the way, are the bad guys because they banded together to hijack a giant WMD space laser that the United States built unilaterally. And somehow they're the bad guys.
I mean, what were they going to do with it?
Not use it.
It says who?
I mean, I don't know. It just seems to me like kind of the reverse of Star Wars. Like, usually you want to be going after the people who built a giant death laser and are imposing
Not
their will
defending
on
it
other
from the people that are trying to take it, destroy it.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, can't we
probably-
just talk about Modern Warfare?
But I guess what Jack is trying to say is that Call of Duty has gotten away from where it originally started with the first Call of Duty, where it was a very reverent kind of like it. I mean, that game still stuck to like the Medal of Honor thing, where when you died, you got like this quote from Dwight Eisenhower or some other, historical figure around that period, and they based everything. They based all the levels and missions on like actual conflicts, and they tried to stick to a more realistic tone, if not necessarily like completely realistic. There were certain scenes.
I mean, I love me
one.
some World War II. Don't get me wrong, but I think there were so many games like that at that time. I think Modern Warfare. I don't think they were trying to do anything. I mean, I don't think they were trying to make a political statement or do anything like that. I think they were just trying to upgrade on new consoles with new hardware and do something a little bit different.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, because killing Arabs and Russians, I mean, is killing Nazis and Japanese any better?
I mean, the difference was it was set in contemporary times with authentic weaponry. Like they did right by all the weaponry involved, the gun sounds, all that stuff.
Well, they did that during the World War II games as well.
But it rings. There's a difference between like Black Hawk Down and how that resonates with people, and
only because it's
Saving
older.
Private Ryan.
I don't know.
Like there's
people
just
have forgotten that history because most of us didn't live through it. Most of us aren't.
But
you don't care about it.
You can see how there's a difference between in 2007 we were involved in the U.S. was at war in Iraq under the pretense of looking for weapons of mass destruction, and Call of Duty 4 is a game where you invade an unnamed oil-rich country in the Middle East looking for weapons of mass destruction, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And like that's the pretense of the game. Like there's a lot more immediacy
I guess I
to
just
that.
don't see the problem with that.
It's not a problem. I'm not saying it is a problem. I'm just saying that that's part of what made it popular at the time.
I think the newer generation of consoles and the multiplayer made it way more popular than that.
Definitely. But I mean, if you look back at all the reviews of this game and its story, like all the stuff that anyone has to say about its story is that it's awe-inspiring and incredible. And outside of the one moment that everyone remembers Call of Duty 4 for, which is the scene with the actual weapon of mass destruction going off, and you play as a soldier and you're dying in the radiation after the blast. Outside of that, I don't think most people remember anything about Call of Duty 4 other than the multiplayer.
That's actually the last thing I remember about that game. I remember Act 2 with the ghillie suit and the sniping the guy, and I remember tons of stuff. That's literally the last thing I remember about that game.
My takeaway after finishing that game for the first time, and it really stuck with me, was at the end, and I don't know if they were trying to make a statement about this or anything.
And the airplane?
Or what? No, not the airplane level after the credits. The very end when you're shooting the guys and the helicopter comes down and they rescue you. As you're going up in the helicopter, like a radio, like a news program starts playing, and it's like, it's a 10-second snippet about the conflict that you were just involved in, and how this squad just basically like saved the world, and not just America, the world, and stopped a nuclear war. And they get a 10-second clip on the news. And I thought that was a really interesting, I don't know if they were trying to make a commentary about media coverage of conflicts, or what. But I thought that was interesting because I don't think there's enough coverage of the military and all that's happening, all that they go through. I didn't see this game as ever being jingoistic.
No, I'm not trying to say that it was. Okay, I'm not saying that the political message was good or bad. Like taking all that judgment out of it, I'm just saying that setting and that contemporary subject matter really hit at like
it was a product of its time, like you originally said.
Yeah, it hit
I
at
get
an
that.
opportune time that really resonated with a lot of people. Like,
I get that.
the whole reason like 24 lasted like a decade.
Totally. Yeah. I think it also, as a video game, it did a lot of things, and I'm not even going to go into the multiplayer yet because I feel like we can talk about that later. I think I have a lot more respect for the multiplayer of this game than you two do, so we'll get into that. But just even as a first-person shooter on a single-player level, I thought it did some really interesting things that games had done before, but maybe not quite as well or as bombastically, or I don't know. The way that it used the multiple perspectives, the multiple characters, the opening credits sequence where you're the president who's being usurped by the terrorist group who are clearly being aided by the Russians. Like, that was super interesting. And I enjoyed all the different perspectives that they gave you on the conflicts, and also the way that they used scripted sequences was friggin' excellent. I mean, it was really well done, the way that it told its story in a lot of the scripted scenes. And that sequence, people forget, but like that sequence leading up to the nuke dropping, that wasn't just a big like scene where your helicopter goes down because a nuke explodes. That was what happened before that was much more interesting to me, and it made that whole explosion sequence even more devastating and heartbreaking because your character just prior to that scene had risked his life to go and save a helicopter pilot who was a woman, sure, but was a woman because that's all that women can do in the army.
Could do. I think they can serve on the front lines.
At the time. That's all they were allowed to do, that and support positions. But so she was stranded. She was injured. She was surrounded. She was gonna get killed. And you and your squad went back and rescued her and brought her to the helicopter, and you guys take off, and that's when the nuke goes off. And if you hadn't stopped to save her, that nuke wouldn't have killed those guys, maybe, presumably. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was an interesting thing that video games had never shown me before. Like, that was a sequence that I had never seen in a game before. And a lot of it is reminiscent of movies like Black Hawk Down and Saving Private Ryan and, even like Platoon. But man, it was powerful in the moment. And just the stuff that game did well, it did really well. So I hold it in high regard. I hold it in pretty high regard. I'm not the biggest military first-person shooter fan. I don't really play too many of them, to be honest. And I'm not a big Call of Duty fan. Like, Modern Warfare and World at War are probably the only two Call of Duty games I actually like. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it had a pretty good story. I thought it was fun. There were some pretty intense moments. Like, one thing that comes to my mind is just the ghillie suit mission when you're like all hunkered down in the tanks and the Russians are walking by you, like literally, inches from you, and they don't see you. It gave me the chills. I'm like, oh man, I'm scared. And the way the controller pulses as they walk near you, it was great. Great. And I think future Call of Duty, especially Modern Warfare and Black Ops and Ghost type games, just became complete set piece, jump the shark type games, and it got a little bit out of hand. I mean, I hold it in high regard. I don't know that I'm entirely sure it's a game everybody has to play, but it's a game I thoroughly enjoy, and I wish I could play the remastered version without buying the whatever. Infinite Warfare.
Yeah.
Friggin' yeah. I think it really straddled the line and walked the line really, really well. It found a balance between being over the top and also just being like, there's Rainbow Six, which is just the complete other side of the spectrum, where it's Rainbow Six, the original series of Rainbow Six prior to Vegas, which even Vegas is more like realistic in tone and everything than Call of Duty, almost to its detriment, in my opinion. And then on the other side is even just Modern Warfare 2, which I think slipped over the edge. And I really like that game for what it is, but it's not a best games period. This game, to me, straddles that line and walks that tightrope really well.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I think part of it is difficult for me, especially because we not too long ago did an episode on BioShock.
Yeah,
and I think, to me, BioShock is a much more interesting kind of first-person shooter. I don't get much out of contemporary realism in first-person shooters.
No, I'm with you on that. I think BioShock is far and away a much more interesting first-person shooter.
Yeah, and there are interesting ideas in Call of Duty 4, and there's some really phenomenal execution. Like you were saying, the set pieces are really great. Like that ghillie suit moment, like that mission in the ghillie suit, that is really great. It's really well done, and I think a lot of it is, for me personally, if Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 were to stand alone and was completely separated, and it did not spawn 37 other Call of Duty entries immediately after it, I think I'd feel a lot different about it.
Yeah, I can see that.
You mean more positively?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if this was if it was a one time thing, or there was a one entry every 5 years or something.
Yeah.
I think I'd feel a lot differently towards both Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 and the series as a whole, and I can't help but kind of look at it, and I think it set a bad precedent for the direction multiplayer went for a long time.
Yeah.
I think it kind of... part of it is its success was fostering that community of adolescents who were playing online, and as online was becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And I think that's partly, at least, why online gaming communities for a long time were so incredibly toxic. I mean, they still are, but that it kind of set this precedent, at least on Xbox Live, which was kind of the initial forerunner for a lot of...
Well, I mean, Call of Duty on the Xbox and PS3 generation was definitely Xbox. I mean, PS3 had it, but if you played it and you were hardcore, you played on Xbox.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's the stereotype of Call of Duty and Mountain Dew, and it spawned that. So there's that aspect to it, and then there's the whole financial part of it, where I think Call of Duty pioneered the whole new entry every year, basically.
Well,
that
not only
you
that,
now see in like Assassin's Creed.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
Tony Hawk did it before that.
Well, Activision kind of was behind that to a degree.
Right.
I mean, you saw it with Guitar Hero around the same time as Call of Duty started doing that. I think they also, I'm not sure they were the first ones to do it, but I think they also kind of pioneered timed exclusive DLC and ridiculously overpriced map packs and buying into spending $100, a year before the game comes out to get to be whatever they called it. I think it was Call of Duty Elite once. I mean, they've called it several different things over the years. And I think Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, I think was probably the last Call of Duty game that I know of. World at War had a pretty decent story, but, that wasn't Infinity Ward. It was the last game that actually had a lot of focus on the single player and the multiplayer, and the multiplayer just kind of blew up. That it seems like every entry after that, that's really what they focus on. Mm-hmm. So that made me lose interest, first and foremost, because I don't care about the multiplayer, because I suck at it. But even if I didn't suck at it, it's just not something that really intrigues me.
Yeah, and I mean, we've done an episode on Team Fortress 2, and that's the kind of first-person shooting multiplayer I can get into. Mm-hmm. There's just a whole different culture and a whole different style of first-person shooting that goes on in Call of Duty that is just not my wheelhouse. I don't find it fun. I find it very twitchy and unrewarding and frustrating.
Yeah. I think perhaps I just don't like military first-person shooters.
Yeah.
There's not especially ones that are trying to be super serious, I guess. Like Battlefield Bad Company 2. I loved that game. Homefront. I liked that game quite a bit. But it wasn't, it's not quite the same. It wasn't meant to be like, Battlefield Bad Company 2 had tons of funny stuff in it, and the people were just ridiculous, and all the buildings would blow up and fall apart. Homefront had a lot of stuff that Call of Duties don't, like, I mean, tons of intel and newspapers and dossiers that you could actually look into and read, and it wasn't just running through corridors and going through those moments. But I guess maybe it's a personal thing, but yeah, you would think I would like military first-person shooters, but I really don't.
Well, and I played Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that is a straightforward military shooter that I adore. I love that game. I like it a lot. And it's hard for me, like, I feel like I'm tearing down Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. And I'm not trying to say it's garbage. Like, all of Call of Duty is garbage. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to talk from an elitist high horse or something. But there is just... So I guess what I'm saying is there is an underlying dislike in me for the business practices and some of the culture that kind of grew up around Call of Duty following Modern Warfare.
I think even just looking at that game on a gameplay level, I totally see where you're both coming from. I prefer something like BioShock as well. Something like Dishonored, something with a little more to it. Something that has a little more replay value. And that's definitely something that I would say is that I've gone back and replayed Modern Warfare. And it doesn't, once you've been through that, it's just kind of going through the motions, and there's not much else there to really play around with. It's weird because I feel like Uncharted sort of the same way, but I can just mindlessly mow through the Uncharted games, and it doesn't bother me. And
but Uncharted has, treasures and things. I mean, different things that you can go back through and find.
Well, but as far as like the shooting gameplay, it doesn't have a lot else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm not disparaging Uncharted. I still love
I know. I'm teasing.
And maybe it's the puzzles and the story and everything that really does it for me with those games. But with Modern Warfare, like, it is just a shooting gallery, and then
it's a well done shooting gallery. Like, props to them. It's not just a shooting gallery. It's a phenomenal shooting gallery.
Yeah, it's tight. I mean, it's done well. The controls, the hitboxes, all that. I mean, the level design, they're done very well.
I mean, some of those firefights are absolutely excellent. So One that always sticks out to me is the one in the newsroom in
the
in
broadcast
that city.
tower.
Huh?
In the broadcast building?
Yeah. And you're trying to find the guys broadcasting the message out on the television. And it's so good because it's wide open. There's guys up top, there's guys down at the bottom, they're throwing grenades at you, they're flanking you. They're behind you, they're in front of you. There's desks and there's papers flying all in the air. There's stuff breaking on the desks. It's excellent. It's really well done. It's claustrophobic. It's well done. The nighttime scenes in that game also really good. Like, they're constantly changing it up. They're constantly giving you different
There's a lot of
things,
variety, like when
different
you're
scenarios. Yeah.
in the airplane or whatever, helicopter, and you're
The
controlling
AR,
that. ARV, URV, UMV,
whatever
ABCD,
it is.
whatever it's called.
UEV? Is that it?
Yeah.
I think so.
So I totally get where you guys are coming from, and I'm not saying by any means that this game's perfect. I still really like it. We should probably talk about the multiplayer.
Yeah, go for it.
So to me, the multiplayer, I don't necessarily think it's I don't think it's Modern Warfare. All of this, I don't think is Modern Warfare 4's fault that it spawned this toxic community. I don't think it's the game's fault that it set the standard for the way multiplayer would kind of develop over the next 10 or so years. I think it's only really started to change, that people don't want the perks anymore. They don't want the experience points. They just want to freaking play. You know, look at Overwatch. Like, the experience points don't go towards like a better gun or anything like that. It's just cosmetic. Everybody wants to be on a level playing field.
Yeah.
But at the time, there was something really interesting and thoughtful about combining RPG elements with multiplayer shooting, and having that constant reward for players who continue to play. It combined what makes RPGs addicting and with first-person shooters. And I think now my one problem with that is now it's sort of been exposed that that's sort of kind of a gimmick. Like, if you strip all that stuff away, I don't know how well that game holds up as just a shooter without all of that. It's not as interesting because you're not getting the different upgrades. You know, even especially if you strip away like the kill streaks and stuff. I don't feel like that stuff's it's interesting without that stuff either. But even at the time, like that game was. You got to remember, Call of Duty 2 did the same thing. People just don't necessarily remember that Call of Duty 2 did the same thing. But with Modern Warfare, it was well done, and it wasn't too much. Like, it's since has become just way too complicated. You're like customizing your loadouts. You can customize from like 50 different choices of what freaking kill streaks you want. You want a shark that jumps out of the water and drags them into the water? Sure, we can have that. That's a kill streak. Like, there's so many different things now, and it's overcomplicated. At the time, there were 3. You had a drone, you had a friggin' airstrike, and you had a helicopter, and that was it. And it wasn't overcomplicated, and it worked. And I'm curious to see what that looks like in the remaster, but I think there's something to be said for a game that did so much to innovate, even if that innovation has grown stale.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely innovated, especially in the multiplayer.
But is it good innovation? Like, is all innovation inherently good?
No,
and I agree. There's definitely something insidious about it. I keep coming back in my head to this. Irrational Games used to have a podcast that they did.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Irrational.
That was good. I liked that.
It was. I forget what it was called, but they had like they had side episodes where they called Irrational Interviews, and they did one where they had the Infinity Ward guys on, and they talked about how.
What are their names? Vince Zampella
and Greg Zeshik? Or is that the BioWare guy?
We really should have written that down. They're like the two main guys.
Well, two of you guys have computers. You could look it up.
I'm going.
Emergency research. We're doing it right now.
Jason West, sorry. Vince Zampella and Jason West. Can I start that whole thing over then?
Go for it.
Right, from the beginning?
No, just that sentence. So,
Episode 38, starting now.
So on one of them, it was Irrational Interviews, and they had the Infinity Ward guys on, Vince Zampella and Jason West. And they talked about what makes the multiplayer so interesting in that game. And they talked really in depth about how they studied. You're not going to like this, Jack, but they studied like pachinko and slot machines, and they studied ways to kind of stimulate that pleasure center in the player's brain, in that they're always getting some reward for what they're doing. Like they're constantly getting rewarded for leveling up. And there's something kind of messed up about that, because I don't like to think of video games as
being that manipulative.
Yes. and being like compared to, compulsive gambling. But still, even still though, like Overwatch, you do get that. Like you get that little reward at the end of every match where you see like the fruits of your labor. You see that little bar filling up. It doesn't even matter that your rewards aren't substantive and they don't play into the gameplay. It doesn't matter that they're cosmetic. You're still seeing that bar fill up. It's still, and that's something that RPGs did long before Modern Warfare did it. So I don't necessarily hold that against them.
In an RPG that's directly tied to your progress through the game, in multiplayer it's just an endless feedback loop. And to an extent, I dislike it more in Call of Duty than in Overwatch, because at least in Overwatch the unlocks are cosmetic. In Call of Duty, for example, they're not just cosmetic. You're unlocking better guns.
So then you're just
better loadouts.
You're contradicting yourself, because you're saying in an RPG at least you're like progressing. You're getting something for that. But then you like it when it's only cosmetic.
You're progressing through the game. Like there's a tangible payoff and an end point.
Yeah.
With the multiplayer in Call of Duty, there is no end point. Your end point is prestiging and starting all over again, and again climbing up with better and better gear, prestiging, continuing over again ad nauseum.
Right.
And
well, I think in Modern Warfare or multiplayer in general, it's more about the social aspect as opposed to RPGs. I think it's not really apples to apples.
Yeah, I'm just Jeremy. Daniel brought it up, and I'm just answering him with my.
Don't point your finger at me.
I'm pointing it at you, boy.
I was talking to Daniel. Also,
okay.
Calm down.
Everyone's out to get me.
I don't know. I guess. Yeah.
Don't go in the woods in South Carolina, Jack.
Ugh. Oh, there are so many clowns.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with those
What's up with that anyway?
dumb kids.
I see what you're saying. Like something like Counter-Strike or Left 4 Dead or Team Fortress 2, like I do feel like those games hold up better. Or even like Rocket League. Like think about Rocket League. It works very much the same way as well. And I think the reason for that is because those games are just simply more well designed. They're better. They're more fun to play. They're more well balanced.
I will say, I do want to chip in and say a couple good things about the multiplayer. I think the level design is incredible.
Yeah.
On pretty much all of the multiplayer maps in the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Yeah.
And I think that their solution to get around spawn camping is pretty innovative. They came up with an algorithm to randomly spawn you around a map depending on enemy concentrations on said map. And that's pretty smart. That being said, that's about those are the two things I'm gonna say.
Here's my question though.
Yeah.
If they didn't make another Call of Duty, or maybe made like one in the last 10 years, would people still be playing that game? Because I think they might.
No, I don't think so.
I think they would have played it for a heck of a lot longer than they did. Because they wouldn't have moved on to another one.
I think they would have played it for a while longer, but I don't think that multiplayer has, like, its very nature is, it works against that. Like, that's why they put out a serialized Call of Duty every year.
Yeah.
It's to change it up and keep people interested in it. As opposed to something like Team Fortress 2, Team Fortress 2 has been around for like 12 years. People still play that all the time. It's still one of the most played things on Steam.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think it would have had a long lifespan had it not gone the route it did, but I don't think it would have been. I don't think it would have been anywhere near what it is today without that yearly release schedule. They got put on.
Sure.
Fair enough.
That's fair. I just want to know before we wrap up. When did you guys play this game? Did you play it when it came out, or a few years later?
2007.
Yeah. Okay. So when it came out.
I think I played it either 2007, 2008.
Yeah. Okay. So we're all kind of coming at it with similar experience. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, it kind of all culminates in this resentment that it's being bundled as a pre-order only game with Call of Duty Infinity War or whatever it's called. Who cares?
Classic Activision.
And it's just like that. To me, that's just kind of the tip of what Call of Duty as a franchise has come to represent to me.
I'm curious, if you went to buy this game used at GameStop, I wonder how much it still costs.
It's still, I think it still costs quite a bit.
Like $30?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
I just think, I think it's a really great game, but I think generally it's overrated by today's standards. I don't think you could go back and play it today and get the same satisfaction you got out of it in 2007.
Okay.
Do you like any of the other Call of Duties?
I like Call of Duty 2. I like that one a lot. And that might be nostalgia tinted glasses. I'm fully willing to admit that.
All right.
All right. So?
We'll have to have a Call of Duty 2 discussion sometime.
So,
Definitely.
Jack, you're clearly on the side of best game period.
I was on the fence. Much like the Mark of the Ninja episode, I came in kind of on the fence. I was leaning more towards no, and as we kind of kept talking, I'm just gonna be the bad guy. Like I feel like we have to kind of draw the line in the sand, and maybe I'm just drawing the line in the sand on the wrong games that I feel conflicted on. But
we are individuals. That's okay.
Yeah, I think the FPS genre has more to offer. I think that it does a lot of things really, really, really well, and I think it did influence the industry. I just don't think it influenced the industry in positive ways.
I think it did both. I mean, I think there was some positive and also some negative.
There were some positive. I'm not denying that there were positive influences from Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, but I think that there were a lot of really negative ones that financially impact people to this day, as we're seeing with like the bundle from Activision with Infinity War. I honestly don't know what the name of that game is. I just know it has Infinity in it.
Infinite Warfare.
Infinite Warfare.
Infinite Warfare.
Whatever. And I think that again, I'm going to just say what I said at the beginning of this conversation, not this episode, because we spent 20 minutes talking about PlayStation 4 Pro, but I think it's a product of its time, and a lot of people remember it very, very fondly from its time. I don't think a lot of people have gone back and replayed it in recent years. I think most people who are still super into Call of Duty switch over annually to the newest thing.
Yeah.
Specifically for the multiplayer.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of people that don't even go into the single player campaign when they get the new Call of Duty. A lot of people.
And I think the single player campaigns in the new Call of Duty, I think they're interesting as a litmus test for kind of how the overall series is doing. And I don't think it's I don't think it's doing well.
Yeah. It's not looking good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's become you can kind of claim at least that Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare.
It's a mouthful.
I keep having to save myself. You can kind of claim that game was thoughtful about its story, and I think every game after that became less and less so until you get to just the most recent things that are just dumb explosions. And you know what? Sometimes it's okay to enjoy a dumb explosion, but I don't think they're worthy of being called best games, period. I think Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 comes the closest. I definitely think it comes the closest out of all the games in the Modern Warfare, Black Ops, whatever series. I just don't think it quite gets there for me.
I think World at War actually had a pretty good story, but after Modern Warfare, the people were hooked on the multiplayer and the more modern weapons and gameplay, and it kind of got panned a little bit because of that.
Yeah,
because the multiplayer
unfortunate time.
Yeah, it didn't quite live up to the multiplayer experience, and then suddenly you were using, carbines again and flamethrowers and fighting in trenches, and people were like, screw this. I did this 3 years ago.
Wait, is it carbine or carbine?
Carbine.
Really?
Yeah.
I've always pronounced it in my head as carbine.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, there's some police out here.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Not here.
Oh.
Well, I hope.
Wait, were we talking about the DS version of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare?
Or the Wii version.
Yeah.
The Wii version, definitely.
Redux.
So Jeremy, what would you say? Is it a best games period in your opinion?
No, it's not.
Really?
It's a game I really personally enjoyed, but I don't think it has any value as far as everybody has to go out and play it. And I think, in fact, if most, gamers now that are becoming new gamers went out and played it, they would be confused by it and be like, this isn't Call of Duty. But I personally really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's one of a handful of military shooters that I actually played and liked, and it'll always have a bit of a soft spot in my heart. And I would play the remastered version, but I'm not buying all that bull crap just to get it.
I am frankly shocked that anyone agreed with me on this episode. I thought for sure you guys were going to be flabbergasted.
No, I mean, it's a game I really like, but I don't think it's a game that everybody needs to experience.
All right.
I disagree.
You would.
So there's that. To me, it's the best games period. I just think that it's a game that, if you want to understand that period of gaming, and you wanna know what that was all about, and you can only play one of them, play that one.
I think it's interesting that you enjoyed the multiplayer and played more of it, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's the difference. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I will agree with you that if you want to know the mindset of kind of a younger person in kind of the mid 2000s, playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, got it right that time.
Yeah. I do want to say I agree with Daniel that I don't blame Call of Duty for the toxicity that came from the people playing that game. I mean, you could just as easily as blame Xbox for packing in a headset with every console.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has something to do with that gameplay loop that we were talking about. I think it has something to do with that fosters angrier players.
Oh, I think just
this is me going off into territory I don't really have any authority to speak on, so
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Maybe.
that was also a product of its time, but because it became so huge, it became this thing that everybody started, not everybody, but a lot of people started doing, and it was just kind of widely accepted at first until there was some serious blowback, and then that created other issues and so on and so forth until we got to the point where we're at.
Yeah.
Which I think is improving, but it was pretty nasty there for a few years.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty on...
It's still nasty. I'm not suggesting it's not, but I think people are more aware of it. I think some people are trying to be better. I don't know.
Sorry, Daniel. It seems like you had more you were going to say.
No, I was ready to wrap up.
Oh, okay. Well, goodbye, everybody.
So that was episode 38 of the Best Games period. Jack.
Daniel.
Jeremy.
Shirley.
Audience, thank you for listening. And thank you, too, for joining me tonight for the Best Games period. Jack, please tell the fine folks out there all about Extra Life.
Extra Life, what is it? It's a gaming charity. Everyone who signs up gets to choose a Children's Miracle Network hospital, and 100% of all the money they raise from friends, family, and strangers...
100%.
100% of it...
Stranger danger.
...goes directly to that hospital to pay for sick and injured kids. And you know what? You know what all those people are sponsoring? They're donating for you to do? They're donating for you to sit or stand or jog and play games for 24 hours on November 5th. Or, whenever you have time around then. Or, heck, if you want to play games from now until then, or even after then. Whatever you want to do, however far you want to take it, you can raise money for kids in hospitals. And that was a very disjointed way of saying, hey, you should go check out extra-life.org, and you can learn more about it and how you can play games and help kids at the same time. And you can also go to community.extra-life.org to get in on the community, meet people in your local area, and participate in some awesome community stuff, and find this podcast. So,
yeah,
check it out.
Yes, we post this podcast every week on
extra-life.org.
Yeah, community.extra-life.org. I get the dash and the dot mixed up sometimes. You can find this on community.extra-life.org. You can also find this episode on Libsyn, our hosting site, iTunes, and also SoundCloud. Not Spotify. I always want to say Spotify, but SoundCloud. You can find us on SoundCloud. And once in a while,
can we be on Spotify? Is that a thing we can do?
I don't think so.
I don't know how one gets on Spotify.
I think you have to
play all of our
label.
episodes randomly anyway.
You can be. We'll make you in charge of finding out, Jeremy. You find out how to get us on Spotify.
Okay, I'm on it.
And
so it turns out we can't be.
Every week we post polls about the games that we covered the week prior, and the past week we did Mark of the Ninja, and as Jack alluded to, Mark of the Ninja did not get voted a best games period by most of the listeners. I think it was something like 70% or something like that.
It was a 1-3. It was like a third agreed with us and 2/3 disagreed with us. It was like exactly 66 to 33%.
Okay. So it was 66% people did not think that Mark of the Ninja was a best game period. They're wrong, and that's fine.
Well, you know what? When you disagree with us, let us know why you disagree. I'd be curious to know why you disagree or agree. Let us know.
That's the reason I post the polls on Twitter and Facebook, is because I want to start a discussion outside of the podcast. I like to talk about games. We all like to talk about games, and we know that our listeners like to talk about games. So if you want to talk about games with us, we would love that. I would love that. So when I post those polls, don't just vote. Comment. Tell me why you voted the way you did. I'd love to hear. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at Best Games Period. Tell us all about it there. Tell us what you think of the games that we cover on Twitter as well. Until next time, we will be covering Kingdom Hearts, the interesting little
we'll
Disney
be doing our best.
Square mashup. What?
We'll be doing our best.
We'll be doing our Dream Drop Distance.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody can really cover Kingdom Hearts.
I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin, but we're going to give it a shot.
Well, you should start at the kingdom, right?
We begin at the end.
Oh, wouldn't you want to...
We begin at Destiny Islands.
We begin with orange-haired main protagonist from Final Fantasy X.
So yeah, that was the best games period.
Yeah.
See you all on the flippity-dippity.
Okay.
And if you want to hear Jack say flippity-dippity, listen to the No Man's Sky episode. Because it was great.
Great, now I have to work in a flippity-dippity somewhere. Jeez. You guys are all saying it, now I have to.